Check it.
Welcome to Wage Cucking with Jmo.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Wage Cucking with Jmo. I've been off for a few weeks on vacation, but it's good to be back. This episode, we have Mike in Space, who is the creator of the Stamps protocol. Would you call it a protocol?
Yes,
securely tradable art, maintained securely on Bitcoin.
Maintain permanently. There's like a typo that's out there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because stamp is STAMP, right?
Oh, okay. All right. Noted. All right. I'm actually pretty excited for this episode because most of the previous episodes, I feel like we're talking a bit about the same things. Like we go over like venture capital splits up, decentralized finance stuff, a lot of like Ethereum alt layer ones, but we never really talk about Bitcoin specifically, just because I feel like Bitcoin's a bit of a boomer chain. There hasn't been like much interesting to talk about, but yeah, I'm pretty excited for this one. So, Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing good. It's late night here and it's early morning over there, I believe. But ready to go.
Before we get started, you want to give me a little bit about your history and how you got into Bitcoin, and maybe a bit of your inspiration for creating stamps?
Yeah. So I've been in Bitcoin since early 2013. That's either very early or very late, depending on the audience you're talking to. Yeah, dabbled with Counterparty a bit starting in 2016, 2017. I had a Rare Pepe, one of the original Rare Pepes. And I've always kind of been involved in that community, even up until the present. It still has a thriving community of artists it's all kind of under the surface. It doesn't get like the attention that like, Ethereum and Bored Apes and all that, that it doesn't get that kind of attention, but there's a lot of creative things happening on Counterparty. So basically earlier this year or late last year, there was a new thing that came out on Bitcoin, Ordinals, right? Everyone's kind of familiar with Ordinals now. It's NFTs on Bitcoin on chain. And it's very novel and it's interesting, but I'm familiar with Counterparty. That's sort of where my mind goes. And I'm thinking, like there's a lot of things here. There's like there's a lot of things that are just sort of like sitting around that if we put them together in a certain way, we can kind of do the same thing. We don't need to do a pointer. Like basically with most NFTs, what it is that the token has a pointer to an image on a server. That's mainly how most Ethereum NFTs work. Yeah, it's a link, right?
It's like a QR code. It's just a link.
It's a link, right? And so, yeah, the novelty with Ordinals is that it's on chain, right? And basically, you can do that with Counterparty as well. No one really tried it, and I ran the idea by a few people, and they all said it was a stupid idea. And and maybe it is, but I was convinced it's going to work because why not, right? So basically, the whole idea behind stamps is that we're storing the data on chain. It's not a pointer, and we're using the Counterparty layer as the token layer to kind of move these things around. Similar to how so with Ordinals, you have inscriptions that's on the chain, and then you have this notion of sats that are moving around, and the sats kind of point to the inscriptions. It's similar with Counterparty, where we're putting this data on chain, and then the token layer kind of tracks them, and you trade those things around. The way we're doing it is slightly different. With Ordinals, they did it in a very responsible way. They put it in this witness data so that no one would get upset about it. And what happened? Well, everyone got upset about it, and they want to get rid of the inscriptions because it's terrible, and Luke is already like putting together a filter, and they're gonna discard all this stuff because they made it too easy for the core devs. It's right there in the witness data, and you can just prune that away, right? So I was thinking, it's like, what if we do it like the worst way possible? What if we store it in the UTXO set? Because every node needs a copy of the UTXO set. You can't prune that away. And everyone said, no, that's a terrible idea. You're going to blow up the UTXO set. And I'm like, watch me. So that's what we did.
That is actually the worst. I maintain a lot of nodes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm ruining Bitcoin. And the great thing about it, unlike Ordinals is like, it's Taproot, it's SegWit, it's all this new stuff. With stamps, we're polluting the UTXO set on pre-SegWit nodes, post-SegWit nodes, prune nodes, full nodes. They're all getting this toxic waste. That's how I'm storing these stamps. And yeah, so basically the whole point of stamps is that they're immutable, they're unprunable. If you want to do it the responsible way, you can do it the Ordinals way, and Luke is going to just wipe them all out, right? But stamps are going to be there forever.
I feel like Luke has been perpetually angry about something for like 15 years at this point. Like
Dude,
he's just like seething.
Luke is still angry about something the Catholic Church did in like the 1400s.
Yeah, there's no legitimate
he's
pope.
not over it.
Yeah, so I mentioned this earlier before we started recording, but I had our good friend Brian Micon on for the inaugural episode of this show. I believe it was like 3 to 4 months ago, maybe around like end of January or middle of February. But one thing I wanted to talk to him about, since he was an original Rare
Sort of
Pepe
Papinski.
art. Yeah, exactly. A connoisseur of the art, if you will. And this was at the point where I think the Bitcoin ordinals were, I want to say like maybe like a month into inception, and they didn't have the following that it does today. Stamps didn't exist, and now like fast forward, like it's only been like a few months at this point, right? But the entire space has taken off to a ridiculous place that like I don't think anyone really predicted it something like this to happen. So you have any thoughts on, like, when you created stamps, did you anticipate adoption to happen this quickly and like to this degree?
I mean, with stamps in particular, I mean, we're still kind of minuscule compared to ordinals. Like we're tiny. There's about 10 million ordinals. There's about 50,000 stamps. That being said, yes, no, I'm very excited. I'm blown away by its success. I thought it might be popular within the Counterparty community, right? But I did not think it would expand beyond the Counterparty community. And I see it every day, just tons of new people coming into it. And yeah, it's incredible. We even started our own fungible token standard, SRC20, which is sort of like a duplicate of BRC20. So what the market demanded,
it's like the ERC, what is it, like 1155, right? The semi-fungible or whatever they call it. Yeah.
So I mean, it was personally, my focus is kind of doing the art on the stamps. That's what I like. But there was a market demand for this, and it was going to happen regardless. So we let it happen, and it's just kind of taken over. So if you go to like Stamp Chain, which is like the main explorer, it's all SRC20 at this point. There's a bit of art kind of like throughout it, but yeah, it's kind of taken over.
Yeah, I remember initially getting into the ordinals on Bitcoin, and this was before anything was really built in terms of like infrastructure or exchanges and stuff like that. And people were trading ordinals on like Google spreadsheets, basically. OTC Google spreadsheets, which is like the most primitive form. But I recently looked at I know stamps is still like substantially smaller than ordinals, but I looked at like the initial growth numbers. I don't know if you looked at those as well, but like at this point in like the lifespan of ordinals versus stamps, I feel like stamps is like at like a 4 or 5x multiplier in terms of the amount of like users, the amount of adoption.
I mean, it's exciting, and I think part of the reason we were able to do that is that we were able to use Counterparty to bootstrap. So from day one, like with ordinals, like they started from zero, and they had to build up this whole ecosystem around it. And with stamps, it's built on Counterparty. So we already had a wallet, we had explorers, we had dispensers. So there was all sorts of ways. We didn't have to trade in spreadsheets, but like there's real ways you can trade them on the DEX and dispensers. So that definitely helped us out. And yeah, just it's fun introducing Bitcoiners to Counterparty because Counterparty's been around since 2014, and a lot of Bitcoiners have no idea it even exists. To them, ordinals was the first time that NFTs have been put on Bitcoin. And then we have to kind of remind them, well, we've been doing this since 2014.
Yeah, so, I had the same conversation with like Ethereum people, thinking that like Ethereum was like the first origination of NFTs, when like Counterparty existed like well before Ethereum, the chain even existed.
If you talk to a Namecoin fan, they'll say it's actually Namecoin, and maybe they have a case there because that goes back to I think 2011. But then there's also debate whether or not these Namecoin records that have expired and have been re-registered are really NFTs, but that's up for debate.
Yeah, it seems like everyone thinks they're first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about that. You talked about it a little bit earlier, but the advantages of stamps versus the ordinals protocol.
Yeah.
I guess the biggest one would be like what you mentioned earlier, the immutability, sorry, of the transactions, so that they can't be pruned. Whereas if you put it in the unspent transactional data, like they'll be forever etched into the blockchain, if you will. Do you see any other advantages in terms of like your design of the protocol that gives it, a functional advantage over the ordinal protocol?
Well, I mean, that is the big advantage, but also we've kind of taken a more laser focused approach where I find that Ordinals has kind of become a Swiss Army knife where you can kind of throw any file format on there. And even if you look at ordinals.com, they're these JSON strings just fill the whole thing. You can't even find art anymore, right? So from the beginning, Stamps has really been art focused. And even when we've introduced SRC20, we kind of we put them in these SVG envelopes, and then we put a background on it just to make it look a bit more like art, a little bit more interesting. So I think if there's a big differentiator between the two projects, it's that we do have a stronger focus on art, and they're just kind of like, you can put anything on Ordinals, and that's fine. I mean, I think they're both fine. They both have their place in the market. We just have a bit of a narrower focus than they do.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you don't necessarily see them as competitors, and you think that like both protocols can coexist and like grow at the same time?
Yeah. I mean, I got a DM today. Someone was asking how they had like some hand painted art and how are they going to put it on Stamps. So I said, don't even try. It's like, it's not going to fit.
Yeah.
We max out around 7 or 8 kilobytes, and it's going to cost you like thousands of dollars. It's not going to look very good. Put it on Ordinals, right? So the focus on Stamps is really pixel art, because pixel art compresses very well. And so that's sort of been our focus. And so, yeah, there's certain things you can't do on Stamps. We're not going to be everything for all people. We do have a particular focus.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like, I guess let's talk a little bit about its comparison to the NFTs on Ethereum. I feel like Ethereum has a huge market share right now. And like you said, the focus is on pixel art, whereas like essentially the way Ethereum NFTs work is you're issued a token, but the token, the actual art itself isn't located on the chain. It's usually just like located on a central image storage link.
That's mostly the case. I mean, there are a few projects. I think Cyber Brokers was one where it's like it's all vectors, so they were able to compress it pretty well, and they were able to put it on the chain. But for the most part, like Bored Apes, like that's just like a link to AWS, right?
Yeah. So it's sort of like you talk about it being a non-fungible token, but it's in a way mutable, right? Because you can just adjust the link or change the URL.
And that happened. There was Troll Town. I forget the name. There's a popular project on Ethereum. I think it's called Troll Town. I forget. Anyways, recently they were upset about the royalties. I think OpenSea got rid of royalties or something, and they replaced all the art with like middle fingers, right?
So I heard about this one.
I saw that. I didn't know the name of the protocol.
I mean, it's hilarious, but how immutable is that?
Maybe that is the art now, because more people heard about that than people heard about like fucking Goblin Town.
Goblin Town, yeah,
good. Yeah, that's pretty funny. So you see any other advantages? So I feel right now that like Ethereum just has like a huge percentage of the market share, and a lot of the Ethereum-based NFT people are very maximalistic, and they don't believe in the long-term longevity of NFTs or art on Bitcoin. Do you see anything that like Stamps or other like Ordinals or whatever can do to attract at least a portion of this market share? Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think it's going to attract the artists who value permanence and immutability, right? It's there for posterity, right? With Ethereum, it's like, I don't know, now they're proof of stake. I don't know how long that art's going to last. I mean, Ethereum, they'll probably still be around in 20 years, but Bitcoin's going to be around in 500 years. And I'd rather spend a bit more and have this persistent data on the most worked blockchain forever. So that's what I value. And that's what some artists value. Some artists might not value that. So it really depends.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So when we had Micon on like a few months ago, one of the discussions we had, we wanted to talk a little bit about ordinals, but at that point there wasn't that much to talk about. The whole BRC 20 standard wasn't even out yet at that point. But the one discussion we did have was basically the same discussion that, like you mentioned, Luke Dash Jr., but the whole
he blocked me when stamps came out. He DMs me and he says goodbye, and then he blocks me like it's a breakup or something. It was really weird.
Wow.
But I feel like this is a perpetual debate that has been going on in the Bitcoin community for like over 10 years at this point. Initially from the like Eric's version of Satoshi Dice, and then using the chain or like the transactional data to provably fair like transactions. The Bitcoin maximalists like Luke thought that was like the op return data was basically spam on the network and congested the network. So I feel like there's a few schools of thought, like with the first being that like this is spam. It makes the Bitcoin network more cumbersome, harder to use, more fees. But then like the other school of thought is like you're paying fees on the Bitcoin network. You're bringing adoption to the Bitcoin network. You're bringing more people to the Bitcoin network. I just want to get your take on how you feel about all this.
Yeah, I have a nuanced view on that. So first of all, I think if you're paying the fee, it's not spam. I mean, the whole thing with Hashcash is that you're paying a fee as like a spam filter. Like that was the whole thing there. Anyway, that being said, I do kind of understand the argument that ordinals in particular kind of basically by putting the data in the witness, they get like a 3/4 discount, right? So they're able to get their transactions in a block for less than market value, some might say. That being said, stamps pays. So when you create a stamp, you're not getting that discount. We're storing in the UTXO set. We're paying our weight. So a stamp is going to cost you 4x what it's going to cost you to create an ordinal. So in my opinion, my unbiased opinion as the creator of stamps, I believe that stamps is paying its fair share. It's not spam. Ordinals, we might want to revisit that witness discount. Just saying.
Mike, wouldn't you? I think there's some interesting thing here with when SegWit was coming out, it was very clear that nobody would ever do a SegWit transaction because you have old school transactions, then you have SegWit transactions. But because nobody was supporting this, you have this hacky format which they call like SegWit wrapped transactions.
Oh God, that's been we'll get to that. Oh my God, the headaches that's caused.
That are actually larger than traditional transactions.
Yep.
And Luke for example, was always against using them because it spams the blockchain, right?
Yeah.
So I guess to get people to use SegWit and to push it through, the core devs came up with, and I'm going to call it an economic policy that was centrally planned by the core devs. And now with ordinals, are we just seeing the unintended consequence of economic policy?
It is hilarious because 2 years ago, everyone was like, let's activate Taproot. Rah, rah, rah.
Yeah.
And now it's like, wait, what does Taproot allow? It's like, I thought the whole point was you knew what this stuff does. It's like all these people who are so gung-ho about activating these soft forks, they don't know what the fuck they even do.
Yeah, so I made a post like a few weeks ago on my take on all of this because it seemed like it was a pretty heated debate where like a lot of the OG Bitcoiners were really against ordinals and I guess in turn really against stamps. But like my take was basically that fees paid to the network are generally good for the network, especially like a network like Bitcoin, where one of the biggest criticisms of like the long-term future of Bitcoin is due to the block halving like in like the next 10-20 years or so. It might like the block reward isn't enough to incentivize security. So like the more fees that go to the Bitcoin network, the more secure it is. And then I also feel like being a bit from like the Ethereum crowd or the like trading altcoins and stuff, I feel like crypto people in general at this point are really underweight in holding Bitcoin. And the reason is because there isn't much going on in Bitcoin, whereas like Ethereum, you have decentralized exchanges, stuff like that. You have like all these altcoins. Generally, when you're trading altcoin pairs, you're trading them against Ethereum. There aren't that many like altcoin Bitcoin markets. And then there's very little developed, like I guess I'd call it token velocity for Bitcoin, meaning like that a lot of the Bitcoin people are basically hodlers, as they like to say, that there isn't like a lot of movement of the token compared to like Ethereum based tokens. And I feel like something like stamps or ordinals changes that a bit, because you're transacting like these NFTs, arts, or in the future whatever you want to build on these platforms against BTC using the Bitcoin chain. So it just adds like another layer of depth to Bitcoin that wasn't already there.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. I mean, during the block size wars, they were like adding back. I remember he had a tweet where it's like, someday we'll be paying $100 Bitcoin fees, and that's a great thing. And okay, so yeah, now we're creating this fee market for you, and everyone's upset. I can't get my transaction through at 1 sat per VByte. It's like, well, what do you want here? Do you want this thing to grow? You want it to just, go down the drain? It's like, we're bringing use cases to Bitcoin. We are paying the fees. The fact that anyone has a problem with that, like, it's just unfathomable to me. It's like, I don't get it.
Yeah,
this is good for you. We're saving you. We're saving you. we're creating this fee market that you thought was good. It was going to happen just on its own. No, you have to create use cases for it to happen. It's not going to happen on its own.
I mean, we talked about this a bunch, but wouldn't you think that if the fees really do go, I don't think $100 is extreme. So let's talk about something a bit more extreme. Let's say standard transaction, a couple of inputs, a couple of outputs. If that's
they're already in the thousands. Some of them are in the thousands already.
Yeah. So say that is like in the thousands. Don't you think that would really accelerate the adoption? And to be fair, we'll say drive chains and liquid, and like, I'm not familiar with stacks, but don't you think that would really accelerate the development and uptake of those things, simply because Adam Back won't be able to afford using Bitcoin anymore? So it just seems like a good thing. I don't know.
So, I mean, the way I look at it is, even if you hate the use case, it's drawing developer mindshare to Bitcoin, and they're building things, and other things will get built that are unrelated to stamps, but you're drawing in the developers, and how can that be a bad thing?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, if you compare it with Ethereum, like the reason why people are developing so many Ethereum layer 2s is because like the Ethereum base layer just became unusable at certain points. So if that happens to Bitcoin, it might actually be a good thing, right? Because it sort of forces...
It's by design. It's by design. We have a halving every 4 years. It's by design. The price has to double, or like this is what is supposed to happen, right? So you can't have it both ways. Like, Bitcoin dies if we can't make up that, the block reward with, the fee market. That's the whole point.
Yeah. So. There needs to be some sort of development to like the design of Bitcoin is like already, the fee market, the block halving, all that stuff is already preordained, right? So there needs to be this stuff like Andreas mentioned, like with drive chains or side chains, in order to help Bitcoin scale if it comes to that point.
I hope drive chains eventually happens. I am a Paul fan.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. I mean, Paul, one thing I kind of disagree with Paul about is he's like, put the NFTs on the drive chain. To me, that kind of misses the point. Just because you want the immutability of the base chain, that's the entire reason people are doing it. They're not going to be satisfied with putting it on the side chain. That being said, I'm a big fan of Paul, and I definitely hope drive chains happens.
And but wouldn't you just put the NFTs on a side chain that's so affordable?
Yeah, but I mean, the market is
and if your NFT becomes valuable enough, wouldn't you just have a mechanism where you move it to the main chain?
Yeah,
because the value is going high, right?
The way I see it,
it's like you move it into the vault.
The market is sort of spoken. The market is happy paying these fees. Bitcoin maxis don't like paying these fees to get into the blocks. The degens love it. They don't, because remember the peak in 2021 of NFTs. People were paying like $700, $800, $1,000 to get their NFTs on Ethereum. It's like, so yeah, the market is spoken. They're happy to pay these fees, even with like stamps. I admit it. It's expensive to make a stamp, right? You're paying for that immutability, right? And there's some crazy stampers, as I call them. Like they spend thousands of dollars. That they go out there and they make their, and you know what? Sometimes they make it back, because if you can sell it for higher than you minted, then it works out, right?
Do you have any like objective limitations you see in stamps? Like you talk a little bit about
Yeah.
the fee structure and like limitations in pixel size and the I guess like the concern I would have is like I understand users are paying the fees, but you want broad scale adoption, right? And the issue with high fees is it prices out like quite a bit of the user base that might want to use the protocol.
I mean, I'm always very frank with stamps. It might not be for everyone. It might not have mass market appeal. It has severe constraints because when you're putting data on the blockchain, that's a very expensive prospect. We max out around 7 or 8 kilobytes, and even then, you're going to be paying a lot of money to do that. The sweet spot, like when I create some stamps, it's normally around 300 to 500 bytes. That's sort of a 24 by 24 canvas. What you would see like with a CryptoPunk, like you could put a CryptoPunk on stamps for, I don't know, 50 bucks, I guess. But yeah, if you want to do anything more like advanced than that, yeah, it's going to cost money. Now you have to decide if that's worth it for you. Some artists might think, no, it's not. I want to put it on ordinals or whatnot. Stamps is just another canvas. It's there if you want it. And again, it's like these are real constraints. I would love it to be less expensive to draw in more people, but there are certain constraints that you just can't really get around. We're kind of playing with a few ideas. Like someone put in a PR where you can maybe create a 10K set where it's like you mint all the traits and then you mint a JSON file that kind of points to those traits, right? So in that way you can kind of bring the cost down. But if you want to do like a stamp where it's the art in a single stamp, yeah, it's going to cost some money.
So you don't. Sorry, I'm trying to understand what you just said. So you separate the.
Yeah, you know how most.
Data,
right.
But then, so you're just moving the thing that is pointing to the trade data. That's what.
Yeah. So like
this is the.
Well, sorry. Go ahead. Go on. Let me. Maybe you're.
Yeah. So the NFT is split into multiple unique. So.
Oh no, I was talking about. What I was talking about there is we're reviewing a PR right now where someone came up with like an innovative way of doing stamps, where instead of just having the art as a single stamp, if you take a look at most 10K collections, they all look kind of alike. One has like a mustache, one has a hat, right? One has green eyes, one has blue eyes. You could mint all those traits separately, right? So they're all still on chain, right? And then then you mint a JSON file that points to this trait, that trait, this trait. So it's still all technically on chain. I think that still works under the ethos of stamps, but it'll be a lot less expensive because you're not minting 10,000 stamps. You're minting a set of traits and some JSON files.
Because there's like a hat. There's like a hat stamp and a mustache, and there's overlaid.
I see. So you apply like the random traits to certain stamps.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how you create that 10K set. And I believe it may have already been done on Ordinals. I think On-Chain Monkeys was a set. They basically did that to save money. So yeah, there's a lot of innovative ways you can go about it where you could probably bring the cost down. But at the end of the day, yeah, if you just want to create a piece of art and put it in the stamp, it's going to cost you a few $100s.
So do you see any future use cases for stamps, especially now that the SRC20 tokens are released, basically outside of like the very basic pixel art and stuff like that?
Right. So, I mean, I'm honest in saying that we did SRC20 because it was big. BRC20 was big on ordinals, and it seems like that's where the market was heading. People ask me all the time, what can you do with SRC20? And I say, you can do anything you can do with BRC20. And then I walk away. So it's up to figure out what does BRC20 do, and then whatever you can do on BRC20, you can definitely do it on SRC20 because it's basically the same format.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe I just like comparing it to Ethereum a bit and like the ERC20 tokens. Like a lot of the fundamental infrastructure isn't there to build stuff like smart contracts and DeFi, but I feel like stuff like basic gaming applications or like a Bitcoin naming service similar to like the Ethereum naming service, like that would be like a reasonable use case for the
naming service definitely. Yeah, that's a definitely a doable thing. Absolutely. The thing with the naming service, it's really about network effect, right? Because you need to be able to download a web browser and you be able to type it in and for it to resolve, right? So that's there's so many name services out there like Handshake and ENS and all these. And if I'm just going to download Chrome and is ENS going to work? I don't think any of them work happen, honestly, unless you download special plugins.
I think it might be Brave where it
Brave,
works,
yeah, Brave.
but
And Opera.
ENS is used, I think, quite a bit for sending money, which
Mhm.
is obviously the operational security aspect here is atrocious. But that's
Oh, you mean
Ethereum,
because
right?
it maps to an address, right? So you're
Yeah.
sending it to that name, and it's sending to a person's address.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the primary mapping is to an address, and actually, if it resolves to a website, that's more like a secondary kind of record. So there's
Right,
different
right.
record types, like with the NSL, which is cool. But on Bitcoin, I mean, you really shouldn't be reusing your addresses. So
Right. Yeah, it's a
then
whole
you,
different like ethos
yeah,
there.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. But with NFTs, the whole point is flexing, and that's why that's why they
right.
tie to their Twitter to get that
Mm.
hexagon on Twitter. You basically have to tie it to your Ethereum address, right?
Mhm.
And so it's you're trading that like obscurity for the ability to flex, I guess, and lose your board ape
Yeah.
MetaMask.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So one other thing I wanted to ask for the listeners or watchers of this podcast that like have no idea what we're talking about at this point, how would one get started on stamps? Like what like wallets or exchanges you'd recommend? Are there like like websites, Twitter accounts? Is there
Yeah.
a SRC20 Explorer at this point?
Yeah,
How
a
do people
lot.
get on board?
So we're building out the ecosystem. At the moment, the best starting point is stampchain.io. You go there, you can see all the latest stamps up in the corner. You can click it. There's a minting service. It's an open protocol. You can mint them yourselves, but the minting service is there as a convenience. We're still kind of relying on a lot of old counterparty tools, and we're slowly replacing them with new stuff because a lot of the counterparty tools, like, they work well, but they're very old. They're built like in 2015, 2016, and they look like arcane at this point. So we are kind of in the process of building out our own ecosystem here. We have integration with Hero Wallet already. We're talking with Xverse and Ordinals Wallet and a number of marketplaces. We're also working with Emblem Vault, where we're able to mint directly into Emblem Vaults so that you can trade them today within Ethereum marketplaces like OpenSea. And but yeah, the starting point, I would send people to stampchain.io.
This the stampchain.io. And is there some sort of explorer that they could use to?
Yeah, I mean, there's a search box. It's basically at this point it's being upgraded, but yeah, you can see all the latest stamps. You can put in an address if you want, and it'll show the related stamps. You could also go to xchain.io. That's the main counterparty explorer, and it has a little bit more details there as well.
And the minting service, is it like a third-party minting service, or is it a native type minting service?
There's a few minting services out there, but like I said, it's with stamps. It's an open protocol. You can mint them on your own in free wallet today. The minting service is there if you're not maybe that tech savvy.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of the guesswork out of it.
Yeah, I think it's similar to what was the name of the Unisat, the minting service for ordinals. So basically, before Unisat existed, like a lot of the people that were attempting to use ordinals, that there was a pretty big barrier to entry in terms of you needed to be a certain amount of tech savvy. And then once the service was released, like basically I think somewhere in like 70 or 80% of the transactions were used from that service.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's not that difficult to make a stamp, but people make like silly mistakes. Like the format is basically the word stamp with a colon, and then you base 64 encode the image file and you put it afterwards. And people tend to screw that up sometimes. I don't know how it happens. So, and then you end up wasting $100, right? So if you think that might be the case, where you might as well use the mint service, it kind of takes the guesswork out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And then I don't know if you mentioned this, but like, are there any major exchanges that are trading these stamp assets?
I mean, not yet. We've had talks with a few of them. It takes time to kind of integrate it, simply because Counterparty is very different protocol from Ordinals. So it kind of requires integrating the whole Counterparty stack, and we're kind of looking at ways to kind of streamline that as well. At the moment, the main ways you can trade stamps is on the Counterparty DEX, and that works well. But if you want more liquidity, then obviously OpenSea works better, and you can put your stamps in an Emblem Vault and trade it there.
I see. Is there some sort of like major OTC market for these for stamps as well?
I mean, I see it a bit on the Telegram groups, but within Counterparty, there's also this thing called a dispenser. And basically what it is, you set it up and there's like a QR code and you send the Bitcoin and you automatically get back the asset. So it's sort of a trustless swap. And that's generally how most of the trading is happening these days.
Cool. And then people will be able to find like counterparties for this on the, like you guys have a Telegram or a Discord or something?
Oh, I hate Discord. There is a Discord. Someone asked me, can I set up the Discord? I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to visit it. Just create it, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't like Discord as well.
I'm too old for, maybe I'm too old. I go in there and it's like, I don't understand what's happening. Right. So I've been on Telegram for years and I understand it. It's t.me/Bitcoin stamps, I think. Yeah, I think that's the address for the Telegram.
Okay. And then for like the listeners or viewers of this, we'll probably post the link to all of this in the show notes.
Great.
I was going to ask some technical stuff if that's allowed.
Yeah, I'll try and answer it. I might get 50% of it wrong.
So Counterparty is a protocol on top of Bitcoin, right?
Yes.
On the Bitcoin chain that they try to kill by limiting the OP return data, right?
Yep.
So how is the data encoded today?
We didn't cover that. That's a good point. So typically with Counterparty, the data does go into the op return because it's just a pointer, right? But the way Counterparty works is when the data exceeds the size of the op return, I think it's 80 bytes, it instead encodes the data in what has been called a fake multi-sig. So it's basically, it looks like a multi-sig, but instead of the keys, it's the data is encoded in there, right? And what we do with the spend key is we send it to a burn address. And that way these outputs can't be spent, right? And this is the process we're using for stamps.
And on Counterparty, you had to have the native. There was a fee token
XCP.
in addition to
XCP,
BTC, was
yeah.
XCP. Is that still required?
Well, okay. So here's the thing. What we did, we very specifically crafted this project as Bitcoin only, no shitcoins. And what that meant was with Counterparty as it is today, you need to burn XCP to register what's called a named asset like Rare Pepe. But there's also what are called numerics. And it's basically just the letter A with a string of numbers, right? And these have always been considered free on Counterparty. So the idea is that they don't require any XCP to be burnt, right? So we picked these to stay Bitcoin pure because that was sort of when Ordinals first came out. Casey, who created Ordinals, was kind of shit talking Counterparty, like, oh, it has this shit coin, blah, 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 blah. And I could see the writing on the wall. It's the reason why Counterparty NFTs aren't really considered Bitcoin NFTs to a fair amount of people. And so we kind of crafted the narrative around, this is Bitcoin only. We're not using XCP. We are using Counterparty rails, but that's all. And I think it's worked well. And
for the functionality of Counterparty, so it's been so long. I just can't recall. Does it have? There's a name service you can register assets. Requires no XCP if they don't have a pretty name.
That's the numerics. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, is there like an atomic swap functionality? Is there a resting order book? What exists?
Yeah, no, there's on Counterparty there's a DEX, right, and it works very well with native
Does it require XCP?
No, you can trade any one Counterparty asset for another Counterparty asset. So I could trade like some sort of Popensky, the Brian Micon Rare Pepe, or a stamp, right? You just set that up in the order book. And so, it works really well. Yeah.
And that requires no Counterparty tokens.
No, that doesn't require Counterparty anything. Nope, doesn't.
And have you seen just old random stuff on Counterparty get revived because of stamps?
Well, I think there's been a lot more focus on Counterparty. Has there been any other projects? Yeah, there's one. There's one called Fogheads. Fogheads was a parody I created based on Blockheads, which was a Namecoin project, right? Oh, wow. So we called it Fogheads, and it was very pixel art driven, right? Because that's what the Blockheads on Namecoin were. And so because it looks very similar to stamps, even though they are just pointers, like a traditional NFT, they kind of had a bit of a pickup in popularity. Part of it might be just my own involvement because I started Fogheads as well. That might be contributing to it a bit, but yeah, it's good. More eyes on Counterparty.
And when you have, I mean, a bit of an issue with using this protocol on top of Bitcoin or on top of other protocols is that if you use a regular wallet with the same, we would say seed phrase or private keys, then you end up accidentally sending away your assets, right?
Well, I mean, you can't really. Here's the good thing about Counterparty versus Ordinals. With Ordinals, because it's tied to specific sats, I think you can technically inadvertently send things away or destroy things. With Counterparty, because it's a meta layer where it's like it's a balance system, it's not really tied to the UTXOs at all. You can send all the Bitcoin out of the address, and the assets remain. This
stuff has happened a lot. That's why I brought it up. Like I've been sent by accident, especially Bitcoin Cash was the worst. Really bad. People wouldn't just send you their NFTs. They would send you what's called a baton. So they would send you actually the ownership of the project. So they would instead of sending the NFT, they would send you the right to mint more NFTs, or in that case, stable coins. Yeah. So I'm very glad to hear that Counterparty is like command based and not UTXO based, because
I mean, people will send you their seed phrase. We see that all the time with Bored Apes, right? Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah, those were my technical questions that I've written down.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I have for today as well. I guess before we let you go today, where can the listeners find you, or if there's updates to stamps or anything cool?
Yeah,
happening?
So I'm chronically online, Mike in Space on Twitter, Mike in Space on every platform like Telegram. For stamps, I would say check out stampchain.io. It has a link to the Telegram. It has a link to the minting service. You can see all the latest stamps. You want to get involved, and that's it.
This is good. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mike.
I've been looking forward to this.